which is an architectural salvage yard run by a guy called John. I've never been to their salvage yard, never been.
In 2024, Drew Pritchard did something that shocked his fans. He sold everything. The fairground boat, the vintage signs, even pieces from Buckingham Palace, all gone. Over 620 items raised $800,000, but it wasn't about money. It was surrender. The affairs, the divorce, the pub ban, the closed shop, it all led to this moment. The king of British salvage was selling his soul. What drove him to auction off his life's passion will leave you heartbroken. This wasn't just business. This was goodbye. Drew Pritchard was born in February 1970 in the old town of Conwy, North Wales. He grew up in a small house under the shadow of medieval castles, where times were tough and money was always tight. His parents ran a tiny corner shop that barely made enough to get by. In the 1970s, the area was struggling badly. Jobs were disappearing, and a lot of families, including his, had to scrape just to stay warm in winter. Drew was only 8 years old when he started looking at junk differently. While other kids played games, Drew searched through flea markets and dumps. By 1978, he had collected over 500 bottle caps and used them like money at school. Some neighbors thought he was just a strange kid with a weird obsession, but no one really understood what was happening inside his head. Behind it all was a secret he carried from his grandfather, a World War II veteran who had once smuggled war artifacts back from Europe. He told young Drew stories about hidden treasures and forgotten history. These stories lit a fire in Drew that never went out. He started sneaking into old scrapyards and abandoned places, once escaping from a pile of falling junk that almost buried him alive. By the time he was 12, he had a personal collection of war items and old coins worth over $200. He even began selling the extras to make pocket money. In the middle of a broken-down town, Drew was quietly building the start of something big. At home, things weren't any easier. His family's income was barely $5,000 a year during the 1970s, which meant no luxuries, barely enough heating, and a lot of sacrifice. His dad worked as a sign writer. He painted beautiful pub signs with real gold leaf. When Drew was 6, he started watching him work. That's when his love for restoring old things truly began. But what no one talked about was how dangerous those paints were. The lead in them damaged his dad's health, giving him tremors by 1980. Drew saw it all. At just 10 years old, he began sneaking tools from his dad's kit to fix broken toys. He once got electrocuted while working on an old wind-up car from the 1950s and had to get stitches. He also started picking apart broken bikes from neighbors' trash, storing them in the backyard until the place looked like a junkyard. It got so bad that people complained about rats. Still, Drew couldn't stop. By the time he was 12, he had fixed and sold about 50 items at markets and made over $300. His father's way of mixing art and restoration left a deep mark on him. But Drew didn't always understand the risks. He used dangerous varnishes and breathed in toxic fumes without knowing what they could do to him. Then, in 1982, a flood hit their family shop and destroyed stock worth $1,000. While his parents were devastated, Drew jumped into action. He salvaged everything he could. That moment showed what kind of man he was going to become. At school, things didn't go so well. Drew started at Ysgol Aberconwy in 1975, but his grades were terrible. By 1980, he was in the bottom 10% of the class. No one knew he had dyslexia back then, so teachers just thought he was lazy or distracted. What they didn't see was what Drew was doing outside of school. He was skipping classes, over 100 of them, to explore old slate quarries. In one of them, he found a hidden World War II bunker full of dangerous objects. He didn't tell anyone his name when he reported it, scared of getting in trouble. Art was the only subject where Drew truly shined. His drawings of broken-down Victorian buildings were so good that in 1983 he won a regional prize and $50. but even his adventures were dangerous. In 1984, he fell through the rotten floor of an old mill and broke his arm. He never told anyone, afraid he'd be banned from exploring again. By 15, he had explored 40 abandoned places and gathered artifacts worth around $500. He made treasure maps and led his classmates on wild hunts. These adventures nearly got him expelled, but they also built the bold, curious spirit that helped him later become a millionaire. At 15, Drew started working part-time at a car restoration garage in Llandudno. It was 1985, and he earned $2 an hour, working long days in the summer surrounded by oil, metal, and sparks. He learned how to fix classic cars, including old Jaguars from the 1950s. By 1986, he had helped restore 20 cars. But the job wasn't without risk. One welding accident badly burned his hand, leaving a scar he still has today. Around that time, he fixed his first old furniture piece, a 1920s oak chair, and sold it for a $100 profit. The garage owner, a former race car driver, shared wild stories about smuggling car parts. That made Drew's imagination run even wilder. By the time he was 16, Drew had saved $800 and spent it on proper tools. But he didn't realize the garage was involved in shady deals. He had unknowingly worked with stolen parts. In 1987, the police raided the shop and seized $10,000 worth of goods. That was the final straw. Drew quit and never looked back, but the skills he had picked up there would shape the rest of his life. That same year, 1986, Drew found something that changed everything. A dusty Victorian gas lamp buried under 2 tons of junk in a local yard. It turned out to be a real antique from the 1880s, made by designer William Sugg. He sold it for $50 and used the money to buy better tools. That same year, he salvaged 15 more items and made about $400, but that junkyard was full of asbestos. And later on, Drew admitted he feared he had damaged his health working there. He also had help from an old junk dealer who taught him to look deeper, showing him how some objects had secret compartments, maybe even hiding smuggled gems. His parents didn't support what he was doing. When they argued about it, Drew packed a few things and lived in his van for a week. But that didn't stop him. By 1987, he had made 50 deals and collected $2,000 from selling restored antiques. At a time when youth unemployment in Wales was nearly 15%, Drew had already found a way to survive and thrive. By 1988, when he turned 18, Drew officially stepped into the world of antiques. He didn't go to college or get fancy training. Instead, he joined a stained glass restorer as an apprentice. The job started small. He cleaned dusty vases and carried heavy doors. But when a van pulled up one day with the words "Architectural Antiques" written on it, something clicked. He realized this wasn't just a job. It was a hidden world full of secrets, rare objects, and skilled craftsmen. Over the next 7 years, Drew worked on everything from stained glass windows to grand fireplaces in old houses. He didn't just learn how to restore things, he learned how to spot value where others saw junk. Also in 1988, Drew made his first solo buy. He found a set of broken Georgian chairs and paid just $100 for them. He spent weeks fixing them, sanding, carving, and bringing them back to life. When he finally sold them for $300, it proved he was on the right path. But this trading spirit had started years earlier. Back in school, at age 12, he used to trade dinner tickets to buy boots. He listened to punk bands like The Jam and Madness, thinking of ways to turn small wins into big moves. This same thinking helped him open his first small showroom by 1993, just 5 years later. Then came 1990. At 20, Drew did something most wouldn't dare. He took his old van, drove all the way to France with almost no money and zero French language skills, and went treasure hunting. He hit markets in Normandy and found rare Art Deco lamps and furniture for under $500. He somehow got everything back to Wales, even though customs officers questioned his cargo. He had no real paperwork, but his charm pulled him through. When he sold the items back home, he tripled his money. This trip opened his eyes to the bigger picture. He wasn't just a local picker anymore. He started buying from places like Norway and Nantes, building a network that stretched across Europe. But not every deal was a win. In 1991, when Drew was 21, he lost $500 when a shipment of French ceramics arrived completely smashed. He had packed them poorly, and they were all ruined. It was like a punch to the gut. That kind of money meant everything to him back then. Still, instead of quitting, he took the broken pieces and turned them into mosaic art. He sold them at markets, turning disaster into something beautiful. By 1992, just 22 years old, Drew had a small stall at Conwy Market. He sold mid-century furniture like old teak tables and retro chairs. He bought pieces for $20 and sold them for 3 times as much. Even though he had no formal education, he had already built a local circle of 50 regular buyers. He still worked on stained glass restoration, often juggling both jobs in freezing weather. He would get up before dawn to arrive at fairs like Newark early, hunting for treasures before the public even got in. It reminded him of those childhood days when he sold bike parts on the roadside just to buy sweets. In 1993, when Drew Pritchard was only 23 years old, he opened his very first antiques shop in Conwy, North Wales. He only had a $2,000 loan from the local bank and a dream. He had just finished a 7-year apprenticeship fixing stained glass and started searching for old, forgotten pieces from torn-down buildings. He once even entered a condemned church in Holyhead and pulled out rare stained glass windows designed by William Morris. They were worth thousands, but it was dangerous. The structure was falling apart. By the end of that year, he had made a $5,000 profit, but it wasn't easy. A rival tried to ruin his loan by spreading lies that Drew didn't know what he was doing. Still, his shop became a hit, and people who were building houses or fixing old ones came to him looking for real, original pieces. His little shop even helped bring more visitors to the town. By 1995, Drew changed how he did business. He started working with demolition crews across the UK. When old buildings were about to be destroyed, Drew would buy the valuable pieces before they were lost forever. One time, he saw 19th-century stained glass windows in a van and bought them for $800. They were designed by Edward Burne-Jones and worth $2,600. He sold them quickly and doubled his money. But not everything went smoothly. At one site, workers found a live bomb from World War II while they were helping Drew gather old iron pieces. It shut things down for days and cost him $1,000 in delays. Still, his collection kept growing. He started saving huge wood beams from barns and cast iron radiators from empty factories. He was now saving over 50 tons of old materials every year and became popular with designers in London. Then came a big setback in 1997. Thieves broke into his shop and stole $1,500 worth of items, including silver candlesticks and brass pieces from an old Liverpool shipyard. The break-in happened on a foggy night. They used crowbars and left everything in a mess. Drew was heartbroken. Insurance only paid $800. He almost went bankrupt. It turned out the thieves were locals, and some of the items were found at a nearby pawn shop. Police recovered less than half of them. Drew didn't take any more chances. He bought new security systems for $2,000 and moved part of his collection to safer storage. He even started buying heavy-duty safes to sell. That same year, antique shop thefts rose by 25% in Wales. But Drew refused to give up. By the year 2000, his business had grown a lot. He was now making $50,000 a year. He had found a new love in industrial salvage. He pulled out old lamps from factories in Manchester and machine parts from shipyards in Scotland. Once, he bought a giant engine lathe for just $500. It weighed 2 tons. After fixing it up, he sold it for $4,000. That's an 8 times profit. One time, a warehouse roof almost fell on him while he was collecting vintage signs. He escaped just in time and saved 100 enamel signs. His client list tripled, and celebrities even started buying from him. He now had 2 assistants and was handling over 1,000 pieces every year. But the work wasn't always legal. He got fined $2,000 once for collecting without proper permits. Still, people started calling him a junkyard genius, and by the end of the decade, his net worth passed $1 million. In 2002, he got a massive break. A big hotel in London hired him to supply antique lights. He found 50 vintage lamps in old warehouses and made a $10,000 profit from that single deal. That would be over $18,000 today. One of the buyers was a famous actor, and that opened the door to more high-end clients. These lamps were beautiful Art Deco pieces from the 1920s, pulled out from a forgotten theater. But Drew also entered the risky world of fake antiques and shady dealers. Still, the deal tripled his yearly income. Some competitors weren't happy. Rumors started to fly about people trying to block his supply chain. By 2004, Drew wrote an article called Salvaging Industrial Heritage that shocked people. He explained how many valuable old machines were being destroyed in scrap yards. He said 70% of the UK's industrial sites had already been lost between 1990 and 2000. He even saved a steam engine from the 1850s, worth $50,000, just before it was crushed. The article made national news. People flooded his shop. Foot traffic rose 150% in just a few months. Some critics said he was just glamorizing junk, but it didn't matter. His voice started to change laws, and 12 historic sites were saved because of it. Then, in 2005, he did something even more daring. He started selling antiques on eBay. At that time, eBay was full of fakes. 40% of antique listings weren't real, but Drew still took the risk. He found a beautiful 18th-century grandfather clock in a Welsh attic and sold it for $5,000 to someone in New York. There were 22 bidders, and it became a frenzy. That clock had been hidden since World War II and had engravings from 1760. Right after the sale, someone tried to hack his account, but he caught it in time. His online sales doubled that year. Traditional dealers were angry. Some even boycotted him, but Drew didn't care. He had opened the world of antiques to people everywhere. In 2006, Drew focused on something very close to his heart. Items from Wales. Big auction houses like Sotheby's were taking over the market, and Drew couldn't compete on size, so he chose to be different. He started collecting slate furniture and other pieces from old Welsh buildings. One table from Snowdonia sold for $3,000. At that time, slate was rare because mines had closed and prices had shot up. His focus on Welsh heritage helped save 15 old quarry sites from being turned into housing, but danger followed. Someone vandalized his warehouse, costing him $2,000. He later found out there was a black market selling fake Welsh antiques, and police recovered $100,000 worth of goods. Drew didn't just sell antiques anymore. He was protecting a culture. In 2008, he restored a 50-piece Georgian furniture collection for a major museum in London. It took him 6 months. One chair from 1780 had a hidden compartment, and inside were letters from the American Revolution, worth $20,000. The whole project earned him $15,000. It also got him noticed by BBC producers. But not everything was perfect. One of the items was a forgery, and it almost ruined the entire exhibit. Still, the work saved fragile furniture that was falling apart in storage rooms. Then everything changed in 2011, when Salvage Hunters aired for the first time on Quest TV. The show became a hit on its first night. Drew had traveled to the Scottish Highlands and found cast-iron garden urns at an abandoned estate. He talked the price down from $1,500 to $800 and sold them for $2,200. During filming, a storm nearly ruined the items. But Drew made it work, and 500,000 people tuned in. This was the start of something huge. In 2012, he filmed an episode inside an old pub in Wales that was falling apart. He bought everything for just $2,000. But while digging through the mess, he found a forgotten chandelier from the 1800s worth $5,000. He fixed it using special crystals from a secret source in Paris and sold the pub's items for $8,000. The pub used to be a smuggler's hideout. That story alone boosted the show's ratings by 20%. In 2013, he started filming abroad. In Belgium, he found a Tiffany-style lamp in a dusty warehouse and bought it for $1,200. The lamp was tied to a scandal from the 1920s involving a Belgian noble. Viewers loved it, and his followers grew by 150,000. But the risks grew too. In Germany, he almost got into trouble over a $4,500 clock. In Hungary, he bought a vase that turned out to be fake. He lost $500, but the show became a global hit. In 2014, Drew and his friend John T. cleaned out a warehouse in Cambridgeshire. They found a 1920s Norton motorcycle buried under dust. They bought it for $3,000 and sold it for $15,000. It had once belonged to a World War I veteran, but there was a twist. The building used to store weapons during World War II, and filming was delayed due to safety checks. That episode showed just how dangerous this job could be. By 2015, Salvage Hunters had reached 100 episodes. In York, he found a black beetle sculpture and made a $1,200 profit. His net worth soared to $8 million, but his personal life took a hit. He was involved in an affair with a married woman. It led to a pub fight in January 2015, and the woman's husband was fined $1,521. Drew was banned from local pubs. The scandal didn't stop the show. Ratings jumped to 1 million viewers. In 2016, he sold his old warehouse and moved part of his business to Gloucestershire. This was a huge change because he had always worked from North Wales. The move happened while his marriage was falling apart. They divorced in 2017, but even with all that, his sales grew. He supplied items for a big restoration and earned $15,000. By 2023, his business was worth $9 million. In 2017, he supplied antiques for a period film and made $20,000. Some of the items came from Norwegian manors. This was also the year his marriage ended, after more than 10 years. In court, Rebecca got a share of assets worth $5 million, including a chapel they bought in 1995 for just $200. Drew kept working. He opened a new shop in Conwy, and tourists and celebrities started coming. Even Marco Pierre White visited. He also began working on book ideas. In 2018, he released a book on how to restore antiques. It had stories from his career, including restoring items from Buckingham Palace in 2011. He sold 10,000 copies in the first month and made $50,000. That helped him recover from a failed auction earlier, where he only made $5,500 instead of what he expected. At the same time, he had to stop working on his house renovation due to lack of money. He finished only 2 floors, so he turned back to online sales, going back to the scrap yards he loved as a kid in Conwy. The book made people see him as a true expert, and it opened doors for TV spin-offs like Salvage Hunters, Classic Cars. Meanwhile, Drew Pritchard met Rebecca in 1998. She worked at a real estate firm, and something just clicked between them. It happened fast. They got married the same year. In 1999, their son, Tom, was born. Life moved quickly, but they found joy in turning even simple moments into something meaningful. They didn't just raise a child. They raised him in a world of antiques. Little Tom would polish silverware while his parents worked. By 2004, when he was just 5, he could already tell the difference between fake and real items. It wasn't just about saving on childcare which was around $500 a month at the time. It became a way to bond as a family. But as Drew started traveling more to source antiques, Rebecca stayed home, raising Tom mostly on her own. That's when quiet tension started growing. In 2003, they had their daughter, Grace. By then, they were living in a beautiful old chapel Drew had bought back in 1995 for only $10,000. It was abandoned when he found it, but he turned it into a home. He filled it with about $50,000 worth of salvaged treasures. One of them was Mick Jagger's old toilet, which he turned into a flower planter. It was odd, but it fit. Grace's nursery was filled with 19th-century fabrics. By 2005, the kids played among old furniture and vintage finds. It all looked magical on the outside, but behind closed doors, things were tight. In a 2019 interview, Drew admitted that in 2004, they nearly went bankrupt. Repairs cost over $20,000 more than they had planned, and it almost broke them. In 2005, Rebecca officially joined Drew in the business. She had left a big fashion job in Hong Kong where she used to make $80,000 a year. But after flipping one vase in 2004 for a $5,000 profit, she saw a new path. Her skills helped the business grow fast. By 2006, profits were up by 30%. She could look at an old sofa, say it was worth $1,000, and it would sell for $3,500. She saved them $10,000 a year by doing restorations herself. But in 2007, things got shaky. Her valuation of an item clashed with Drew's instincts, and they lost $2,000 on the deal. It hurt their trust. Still, they stuck together and appeared in over 100 episodes of Salvage Hunters as a strong team. By 2010, they started using family vacations as sourcing trips. In 2009, they went to Italy and made a surprise $20,000 profit from antiques they found hidden in an attic. That changed everything. In 2012, during a trip to France, they found ceramics worth $15,000. Even the kids joined in. Tom, only 13, once haggled for a $500 clock like a pro. They drove over 5,000 miles across Europe each year, mixing fun with work. But in 2013, during a trip to Spain, their van filled with $8,000 worth of antiques was stolen. They got it back just in time. It was scary. These trips were exciting but slowly started taking a toll on their personal lives. In 2015, something happened that changed everything. Drew began an affair with Amanda Thomas, who was married to his close friend, Janice Bryn Thomas. They met at antique events, hiding their relationship under business. Drew was still married to Rebecca, and it went on for 2 years. Even after Amanda tried to end it, Drew kept sending her messages. Then, in 2017, everything came out. Other women started texting Amanda, saying they had been with Drew, too. Amanda finally told her husband. He had already noticed Drew's number on her phone too many times. The whole thing exploded, right when Drew's fame was at its peak. In October 2017, it got worse. Janice confronted Drew at a pub called the Liverpool Arms in North Wales. Drew had sent him a text calling him a coward. That night, Janice punched him. Glasses broke, Drew hit the floor, and chaos followed. Janice was fined $1,140 in court and banned from all the pubs in Conwy. Drew didn't press charges, but he was also banned from 44 pubs under the local pub watch rule. His reputation was falling apart. Later that same year, Drew and Rebecca divorced. It had been 19 years. The court called it irreconcilable differences. But everyone knew it was because of the affairs. They split everything, including an old chapel they had turned into a home. That property alone was worth $795,000. Rebecca made sure their kids were stable. Drew moved away, starting over in Bath. In 2018, Drew finally admitted to the affairs in an interview. He said the stress from work got too much, and he made bad choices. But people didn't see it as an excuse. They saw it as a pattern. He had moved into a $1.5 million Georgian townhouse in Bath after the divorce. He wanted to rebuild, but things kept going wrong. In 2021, the bath home renovations hit a wall. He found hidden rot in the structure and spent over $100,000 more than expected. The budget had already been $200,000. Plumbing and electrical work alone cost $150,000. He tried to keep the project alive, but it drained him. He only finished a few rooms upstairs. The rest stayed empty. In 2022, he shut down his antique store in Conway. It had become a tourist spot since opening in 2017. Fans would come from all over hoping to meet him. Even celebrities like Jamie Oliver had visited. But after the divorce and affair scandal, things changed. He announced the closure quietly and asked people not to visit anymore. It was the end of something big. Then, in 2024, he auctioned off most of his personal collection. Over 620 pieces. The auction raised over $800,000. One of the items, a fairground boat from 1930, sold for $7,000. Another piece linked to Sir Malcolm Campbell's Bluebird project went for $17,000. But for Drew, it wasn't about the money. It was painful. He called the pieces old friends. Letting them go meant letting go of parts of his life. By 2023, Drew had left Salvage Hunters after more than 200 episodes. He said he was exhausted. He wanted privacy. He thanked the team, including Rebecca, who had helped him build the show from the start. But too much had happened. Divorce, scandal, court cases, public shame. He just couldn't keep up the public image anymore. He stepped away to focus on small restorations and finishing his home in Bath. It was a quiet goodbye to a loud and messy chapter of his life.